He's undercover.
To give you guys a disclaimer, our other English lab, Norton, is going to be very jealous that he didn't come in and meet you guys today, so that's just him in the background with his disclaimer. I assure you he's perfectly fine. So just to go into introductions today, we have our African cheetah. He goes by the name of Triton. Triton is 7 years old. Along with Triton, we have 3 members of his training team. So we have Jason leading the way. We have Elias in the back. And then on the far side, we have Kira. And with the 4 of them, and who made his entrance first, we have one of our 2 English labs. We have Norton, who is also 7 years old. So that's a cool dynamic here. We have 2 cheetahs and 2 dogs. So along with Triton, we have our other cheetah, Littlefoot, who's not doing a very good job at keeping Finn occupied in the back. But the great thing is our 2 dogs and our 2 cheetahs have been together since the dogs were 3 months old and the cheetahs were 2 months old. And then I'll ask you guys, what role do you think the dogs play with the cheetahs?
Is that better for you? Just respect?
Yeah.
Comfort animal.
Absolutely. You both are absolutely right. You know, cheetahs by nature are very cautious and wary animals. And they have to be for a lot of different reasons. And what they found, and this practice actually started in the 70s, is that if they're paired with dogs in a zoological setting, if they're paired at a very early age, they'll bond with the dog, and they'll look to the dog to a series of different cues. And so even though it doesn't look like Norton's doing much over there in that corner, by him laying down and being nice and calm, he's sending calming cues to Triton. And then in turn, what you'll probably hear throughout the encounter is Triton letting his trainers know that he's very relaxed as well through his part. That's on cue. And so now that I got the long-winded introductions out of the way, it is totally you guys' time, so you can feel free to ask any burning cheetah questions that you may have. And then between myself, Elias, and Kira, we can do our best to answer.
And I'm actually going to jump in here. We encourage photos, but with flash off. Okay?
He is upset.
Me?
No.
Elias is sometimes upset. Very, very well.
I would have been curious, like, maybe what bushy tail at the end, is that for something?
Yeah, and so that tail is going to be very important to a cheetah. As you guys know, they are the fastest land mammal. These guys can actually hit speeds of around 65, 70 miles per hour. And they can actually hit that speed at right around 3 seconds. And so that very long muscular tail is going to act almost like a counterbalance. It's going to, help them maintain their balance. And then people actually have said that they may actually use that white tip of their tail for communication.
Any other questions?
They'll also start moving that tail whenever they're feeling playful. You'll see it move back and forth. If you guys have cats at home, there are certain traits that are almost just synonymous with cats. And we don't like to draw too many parallels to the domesticated feline, but there are a lot of traits that are very similar between the cheetah for you and your cat at home.
So now we got our cheetahs from the circuit. How do you pick which cheetahs are going to be ambassadors?
Oh, that's perfect, actually. Ties in exactly right. So we got our cheetahs from the San Diego Safari Park. And there are teams of people who work within AZA zoos that work with something called an SSP, which is a species survival plan. So there are teams of people who look at the genetics of certain populations and say, okay, let's try to breed this animal with this animal because we want to try to keep the genetics as pure as possible. And a lot of times, you'll do that, you'll get those animals together and they may work really well and, have a litter of cubs. You may have animals that get together and they want nothing to do with each other. We literally had a fennec fox who would turn her house away from the male because she just was not interested in them. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So as part of that SSP, their mom, Allie, gave birth to 2 girls and 2 boys. The 2 girls were going to stay in San Diego and be exhibit cheetah, and the 2 boys were going to be ambassador cheetah, which is actually what they are now. And the reason for that is that their genetics are very well represented. So during their lifetime, there wasn't any call for them to breed. So that's why they were either going to be exhibit or ambassador, so they kind of split it 50-50. So Allie got to raise her 2 girls, and we raised her 2 boys. So they came to live with us here when they were about 2 weeks old. So they've been a part of our family literally ever since 2 weeks. When we first got them here, they not listening to be fed every 2 to 3 hours through the night. So we all kind of took turns being mom and dad, coming in really early, staying very late, sleeping over. And you can see the very rewarding bond the cheetahs have from it now. Male cheetahs in the Wild Wolf Form Coalition, the females will solitary. So what we have here is, we always say we have a 4-man coalition with our 2 cheetahs and our 2 dogs, but they definitely accepted Jason into that coalition as well. A lot of the behaviors you'll see today, he'll sit here and groom Jason a lot, and that is what they would do with their dogs or, Littlefoot in the back. So they definitely accepted him as one of their own.
Also, the reason why Jason has probably the more patchier arms. He will say, it just pats his mind. Jason, how's their tongues feel?
It's really rough.
And that tongue is actually, meant to lick meat off a bone. But as Kira mentioned, it's also meant to provide a loving behavior. And so you'll see that Trayton thinks very highly of Jason. And so what you've actually been seeing Jason do throughout the encounter is doing a training session with Trayton. Have these guys here, we need to think of not only their physical enrichment, but also their mental. And so we'll make a point to train our cats every single day. And then actually by you guys joining us this morning, you're actually helping us with a training session. And with Lige being one of our training experts here, he can dive a little bit more for you guys.
Yeah, and so this is actually the room that the dogs met the cats. So it's always had a very positive association with it. And so when we invited the general public in here, we wanted to make sure that that positivity remained. And so we wanted to have that encounter, anything they would encounter with you guys, we wanted them to experience it with us first because we could lend some more and greater credibility to it. No offense to you guys, but they know us a little better. So initially, if you would come in wearing a baseball cap or sunglasses, they would fix it. And it'd be challenging for us to get their attention and have them focus on us. They'd be looking towards anything that was new within their environment. Anytime they would see us, it would be without a hat on, it would be in a specific uniform. And so it was always something that we wanted to make sure that they didn't experience for the first time in this environment with people that they didn't know. So over the years, we've exposed them to wheelchairs, crutches, they can become conditioned to hats, but we try to maintain this environment as positive as possible. And ultimately, if Triton isn't enjoying his time in here, then you guys won't enjoy yours, and the whole message will be skewed. And so we try to capitalize on it by also doing a training session in here. And so the great thing about the training session is you guys provide a novelty within their environment. And the novelty is great that it lends some new sense, some new sights to their everyday routine. And so we very much enjoy that. We want to make sure that when we're doing that, it's not in negative. And so the training session is fantastic because you guys oftentimes will play the part of even the vet. Sometimes the vets can have a very negative interaction with the animals within the zoo because they're only known for veterinary practices. So I know my dog can tell the difference when I turn right to go to the park and left to the vet. His entire attitude will change. And so we'll train the cats today to lay down in this position. We can do some palpation. We can draw blood from the tail. It's a great muscle that runs through here, but it also provides a great vein. And so we can run diagnostics all while the cats are awake. They just recently got their second COVID vaccine, literally just right in the hip. And your annual vaccines like your animals would have at home, it's all the same basic procedures that we have here. And so the only difference is that if we can train it to be a bit more, or at least less stressful and remove some of the variables of anesthesia, that's the route we'll take. Cats can normally retract their claws, but cheetahs are one of the few cat species that can't. And so they'll routinely need to be trimmed if they don't wear them down on their own. And Triton isn't our best runner. You can probably tell the athlete in the family goes to his brother Littlefoot. So we'll routinely clip their nails when we have a behavior. We'll present them on the front of the enclosure. And anything that we're training is essentially something that we can do to better care for them while they're here. Have them provide help in their own husbandry care, their own veterinary care.
You guys have any questions?
Behind the ears up for defense like that, shading over there, I guess?
It's actually pretty interesting with cheetahs. So when the cheetahs hit 2 years old, they actually lost their mantle, which when they're born, they are born with a blonde mohawk. And it's actually two purposes for that. So it allows them to blend in with the tall grasses of the African Serengeti, but it actually makes them look like honey badgers. And a lot of animals will quickly learn that honey badgers are not animals that you want to mess with. And so by cheetahs kind of mimicking that animal, it is sort of a defense for cubs. Now, unfortunately, cubs do have it very, very rough in the wild. African cheetahs are actually Africa's most threatened cat. There are roughly about 6,700 African cheetahs left. People are actually surprised to find out that there's also an Asiatic cheetah, which is slightly smaller. But they're down to roughly 46 individuals left, and they're only found in the country of Iran. Now, these guys have a lot of problems with larger predators, with cheetahs being the fastest land mammal. They give up a lot of size for their speed. Our boys usually hover around 100 pounds, with the largest male cheetah in the wild measuring, at 160 pounds. If you think about lions can get to be as heavy as 420 to 500 pounds. So these larger predators will push cheetahs off of their hard-earned kills. They will kill cheetah cubs, which represent future competition. And they'll also push cheetahs out of protected areas. And so cheetahs, more than any other African predator, have a much higher human conflict, being that they do hunt during the day. And so if a farmer sees a cheetah in the area, the first thing they're going to naturally think about is their livelihood, which is their livestock. And so unfortunately, cheetahs are also wrongfully persecuted for taking livestock, and they are also trapped and killed at a very high rate. So it's usually I feel like that's our Debbie Downer part of the encounter, but there's a lot of work that's being done to save the cheetahs. Yeah.
How do they adapt? How do they then with people now wearing masks? Was it tough to train them?
You guys are actually experiencing the tail end of it. When we first started seeing positive cases in cats, we done hazmat suits. You guys ever seen Breaking Bad? It was very much a scene out of that. So it was overnight. It changed our relationship with them. And what we always like to highlight is the trust. So there's a lot of trust. There's trust that we have in you guys when you enter this space. There's trust that you have with us, and there's trust that the cat has in all of us. And so we want to make sure that we honor that trust. But sometimes, in a training aspect, we oftentimes will look at it as like depositing money in a bank, and sometimes you need to withdraw. And sometimes a withdrawal will be a needle from a veterinary procedure or something like that, And so it's, you lay a solid foundation with the training and building the relationships, and then you hope that you have enough deposited that one day you might need to withdraw something. And that withdrawal during COVID was essentially all you could see was our eyes. And they did fairly well with it. And it was a lot of change all at once, and it was, the dynamic in the relationship was so different. I mean, the only time you ever see them in a halter and a harness or a collar is in this space. Outside of this space, Jason especially interacts with them just in their environment. And so for us to have to withdraw like that, it must have been very, very different for them. But they fared well with it. And it was because of the foundation that we had laid throughout the years and the relationship that we had built that allowed us to do that.
It's funny, we still have animals to this day in this building. Our birds especially are very unsure when they see you. They're like, I'm pretty sure that's you, but they take a second or two. So the birds have definitely taken the longest to acclimate to the masks.
Designs are crazy. What are their eyesight like? They're
even when the cats are in here, you see them looking out the window, and it's because they're looking at the cars going, past the fence. These guys are also diurnal hunters, so also you notice that predatory animals will actually have front-facing eyes, and then you'll notice that prey animals will actually have eyes that are set closer on the side of their head, which gives them more peripheral vision.
So it's starting to done cleaning up the floor. We're going to come around and meet everybody. Don't forget the parking counter. And anybody who's on top of the ground, make your way down and we come on over. Feel free to. And the reason we have you guys sanitize in between again is because they are so close with our cheetahs. We want to make sure that we're not passing any germs accidentally through them.
So this is 5 Finn with one in the back because he knows that
He's getting attention, and he's not, right?
He's definitely a fan of
But like, seriously, we could be on a walk and they could both be getting love and affection and attention, but it's been so long since we've been getting attention.
It's the immediate.
Yeah,